the band prided itself on being able to take more drugs and harder drugs than any other band. But taking drugs doesn't make you rock and roll. It just means you're taking fucking drugs.
Hello, Bobby. Nice to see you.
Hello, Don. How are you?
Tell me about your lockdown. How was lockdown for you?
For me, it was actually very productive. I managed to write a book. Before the whole Wuhan, COVID hysteria, I went into the studio and I sat and I thought about what I wanted to do over 2020. But I wanted to challenge myself creatively. In the past, we sometimes been guilty of, making kind of high energy rock and roll or high energy electronic rock records that are quite claustrophobic and angry sounding. You know, people come and hear Primal Scream play live. They want a high energy rock and roll show. They want a party. They want to hear loaded, moving on up, get your rocks off. They want us to smash, take the fucking heads off, which I totally get because I love high energy rock. But you can't always. We wanted to do something else because I love the dynamic of a male and female singing together. Graham Parsons, Emily Harris, George Jones, Tammy Wynette. There's just, you can tell the story, you can tell a love story.
Well, like those records and like using a male voice and a female voice, there is a sense of sort of innate maturity about that, isn't there?
Yeah, well, that's what, I think so, yeah, definitely, yeah. That's what I like, I like slow, sad, damaged blues songs and soul songs. That's really my thing, And, I'm a sucker for that stuff. And, but I knew we could play it and I knew we could make a record with that feeling, and that's why I wanted to make the record with Jenny Beth, and I wanted to make it like a duets record and present it as a duets record, both a man and a woman,
So what was the process of writing the book like?
I wrote down a timeline of, when I was born in the early 60s up until 1991. It's basically what I wanted to write about was like the journey of a working class person. The journey to becoming an artist. Music and art were a portal to another world for me, and in many ways became the true way that I was educated. It opened the world up to me and provided me with a frame of reference, whether that be films or books or theatre. And I got an education through my interest in pop culture that I never received at school.
Did you enjoy the process?
Cathartic is one word for it, but I think it was self-enlightening. I learned that I had quite a nice time. The world of rock and roll and pop music really opened up to me. It was, I just dived right into it and was consumed by it.
How do you contextualise the enormous success creatively and commercially of Primal Scream?
The story I was trying to tell in the book was how I became who I am. So I learned a lot from people I've been around, and I wanted to write about that and the people that I met who, even if they didn't know they were helping me, they helped me, just by being themselves and being nice and being inspiring and everything that constitutes being a musical artist, You get some musicians that are like, oh, I just want to play the guitar and don't want to get my photograph taken, and, sometimes the clothes are more important than the music.
Well, I know that the book is, I think, largely about the early parts of your life, but often when people in the public eye write books about themselves, they write their autobiographies and memoirs, it's often to counteract or to set the record straight because of misinterpretation, by journalists, by the media. How do you feel generally about the way that you and your career and the band have been portrayed?
Maybe we were seen as just like a bunch of, like crazed drug addicts who just loved to party and get wasted, and I think we were underestimated because of that.
But that was, I've just been working on a project about the 90s, interviewing lots of people who were around at the time, lots of people who became very successful, popular at the time. And usually when you talk to people about their indiscretions of their youth, they're kind of circumspect or a bit coy about it. But in the 90s, drugs were such a fuel for creativity. And people talk about it with almost pride in a way. Yeah. And you were sort of part of that culture in
definitely.
The 90s.
We were definitely part of that. Our whole thing was, the band prided itself on being able to take more drugs and harder drugs than any other band. But taking drugs doesn't make you rock and roll. It just means you're taking fucking drugs. Towards the mid to the end, to late 90s, I began to notice that people around me who had been very creative at the beginning of the 90s, who showed great promise as journalists, photographers, filmmakers, musicians, singers, songwriters, were succumbing to hard drugs and neutralizing themselves. And myself and the guys in the Primal Scream, we were still making, I feel, powerful music. Vanishing Point album, 1997. The Exterminator album, 2000. Were strong records, but they were made in the midst of this realization that I had about the drug culture and as a way of saying fuck you to straight society. See, I think if you're a powerful artist, you're a threat to the government, you're a threat to big business, you're a threat to the power structure, because your art will question the power structure, your art will question the morality of a society that's as unequal as ours. In the 90s, I felt this is what was happening in Britain, that maybe we've just fooled ourselves. We bought into this whole drug culture thinking that we're rebels, but really, there's nothing rebellious about it. We're just taking ourselves out of the picture.
My personal impression of the 90s that it gets a bad rep because people try and contextualize it by its end. Oasis make Be Here Now, it's the death of Diana, it's the eventual disappointment of New Labour because of the Iraqi war. But actually, I think that there were some extraordinary things that happened in the 90s. Fantastic. I mean, on a par with the 60s. But are you saying that it's somehow negated by the drug use?
No, not at all. No, because that was like a personal opinion of mine because of the group of people that were around our band, which is a very close circle of people. But I was kind of trying to write about the culture, the whole Thatcherist thing, and how just grey and repressive Britain was, and it just felt like, the Tories were never ever out of power. Thatcher elected 3 terms. 1 term I can understand, 2 terms, but 3 terms. Coming from Glasgow in the west of Scotland, which was very left-wing, it was very, it felt like I was very much in a foreign country. But the community that I found in the clubs, just meeting people in the scene and the inclusiveness of it was very inspiring. Good things were happening with the band. We started getting hit records like Loaded, Come Together, then we did Screamadelic, a record, and life was very fast and very beautiful, and it did feel like a new era, like maybe people felt in 1967 or 66, where it was like, suddenly we can make a change, we can make a better world, we can where I did know people still in the rock world, in the indie rock world, but you know, it was the people that I met in London and the clubs, or in Brighton and the clubs, as a brotherhood and a sisterhood here. And it gave me hope, you know. Suddenly these possibilities were opened up that people didn't know were possible before, and the country was all the better for it.
Obviously, John Smith was meant to be the great saviour of the Labour Party. His tragic death allowed Tony Blair to start his ascent, causing much excitement in the country, not least because of his espousal and support of the arts. But for someone in that world, were you excited about the prospect of Blair?
I had kind of turned off from politics. I was always left-wing, but I felt defeat. I felt that, you know, 3 terms of Margaret Thatcher, then another term of John Major. I just felt it was Conservative Party it was like a one-party state. United Kingdom's a one-party state. And of course I voted for Tony Blair. I voted Labour every time. I was just thinking, it's great, we've got a Labour government. I didn't really understand that they were really, in many ways, a continuation of Thatcherism. 10 years later, I did, because I began to become more politicised. But Britain's more unequal now than it's ever been.
As an artist, how have your ambitions changed from when you started?
The ambition for me at the moment is to become a better songwriter and a better lyricist, and try and make good art. I just want to be a good artist. I've got a clarity in the last couple of years that I never had before. And that's what I've always wanted to achieve. And this record that I made with Jenny Beth, I think in some of the songs, in quite a lot of the songs, I'm getting there. And that's my ambition, to continue down that path.
So what have you done? What have you achieved with this record that you haven't achieved before, and why did you want to collaborate with Jenny Beth?
This record, because of the arrangements of the songs, the pace of the songs, the amount of space in the songs, and the instrumentation we used, it allowed me as a lyricist and a singer to breathe and express myself in a clear, open, raw, honest manner. We'd met Jenny Beth out on the roads. She came and sang with us at a Primal Scream Massive Attack concert in Bristol. It was just a really nice feeling when we sang together. We just were really comfortable. There was no awkwardness. And then I had a couple of studio dates with her in Paris, just jamming. And again, in the studio, the voices complemented each other. So, I mean, every night I came back from the studio just in ecstasy, you know. It was just like, whoa, we're making something great here.
Good. Well, it's a great record. And Bobby, thank you very, very much indeed. Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.